What is socialism is the right-wing version of what is a woman. Look, people on the left, they cannot tell you for the life of them what is a woman. They can't even give you an answer. On the right wing, they do give you an answer on what socialism is, but it's usually complete BS. It's complete obfuscation, a lot of lies, a lot of deception. Now, I'm going to give one specific example. Pretty much everyone on the right wing does this when it comes to socialism, free healthcare, communism. Everything's intertwined. Everything's messy. They mark up the waters. I'm going to give the example of Steven Crowder, because I think a lot of people have probably already seen this debate where he said socialism is evil. And a kid came up and said, what do you define as socialism? And Steven Crowder did not give the definition of socialism. The definition of socialism is the redistribution of wealth. Now, we can debate on if that's good, to what level that's good, the pluses and minuses all day long. That's perfectly fine. But if you can't even define the word, then there's a serious issue. If you can't even define what a woman is, how are we supposed to talk about who can play in what sports or who gets blah, blah, blah? If you can't even define the word correctly, then we can't even get off the ground. And then this is where the obfuscation starts, because usually people like Steven Crowder will say, oh, well, socialism is communism, and communism is China, and communism is Cuba, and you want to live there. And it's like, what? I asked you for the definition of socialism. You completely do a 180 and start talking about communist China. Number one, China is not communism. Communism is a stateless, classless society. China is not a stateless, classless society. I don't even know what when these people bring up communist China, China has markets. If you've ever been to China, if you've ever seen a video of anyone in China, people are purchasing stuff with currency. By definition, that means it's not a communist country. You might dislike that. You might dislike the facts of it, but that's the definition of these words, and I operate in facts. Now, usually the obfuscation is people say, well, I want free healthcare. That's generally what people are asking for with more socialism is they want free healthcare, universal healthcare, and some people also want free college. Now, what Steven Crowder says to these people is, oh, you like the more Nordic models. You like Sweden, Denmark, Finland, etc. I think I said Swinland. I meant Sweden, Finland, Denmark. You know, the Scandinavian countries, Northern European countries. And what he goes to there is, although that's what these kids are asking for, when these college kids come up to him and say, I want universal health care, which these people want higher taxes, a better safety net for people, and just like, for example, Sweden, Norway, Finland, etc. And then he says, that's communism. But then these people say, no, that's not communism. I just want what those have. And then what he goes to and he says, oh, but that's not socialism. By definition, those countries are socialist. Now, they're mixed economies. They are free markets, 68%, socialism, 32%. I'm just throwing out numbers because at the end of the day, pretty much every country is partially free market, partially socialized. It's kind of obvious. Any taxes are socialist. Public roads, socialism. Military, socialism. Teachers, socialism. Any redistribution of wealth, any taxes are socialism. Now, you might say that those things are different, and that's what Steven Crowder does say. He does say stuff like the military, it's a need, and when things are needed, obviously, we get them done. But that kind of misses the whole point, and the people are saying, Steven Crowder will make the argument that, oh, well, those things are different. The military is different, the police are different, public roads are different, because those things are not public goods. Those things are needed. If you don't have a military, your country ceases to exist. And I do agree with him. I do think that the military, I do think the police force, I do think firefighters, it wouldn't be really plausible in any way to run a society without those things. So because we need those things, we do need some taxes. Now, how much we spend on the military, that's a different discussion. But I do agree with him that those things are in a different camp. But in the same right, although we are able to run healthcare to some degree, because we do have Medicare, we do have Medicaid, so we already do have universal healthcare for a lot of people, but nonetheless, I do understand his point, and his point is we have these systems, for example, college, people pay, because it's kind of the same thing. With schooling, we have free K through 12, we have socialized K through 12, and then we have free market for college and advanced education. And with healthcare, Medicaid, Medicare, we do give for poor people, and for older people, we do give them universal health care. So I guess what he's saying is these institutions, healthcare, I guess healthcare is not really an institution, but schooling is an institution. He's saying that these things are able to run to a relatively decent degree. That's obviously highly debated, but he's saying that it wouldn't be possible to not have a military. Like, if you didn't have a military, not even possible. Your country doesn't exist. It will get invaded and taken over immediately. But obviously, we're able to have college. We're able to have college that isn't free. We're able to have healthcare that isn't free for the average person. And we're relatively surviving, I guess. A lot of people would complain and say that life expectancy is stagnating or even going down. Quality of life is going down, and we're the richest country in the world. And look, at the end of the day, I think he views it from more of a fairness standpoint. He says that any taxes that are taken are bad. I do acknowledge that some taxes are fine because, we just have to have some. And I think it's a fine perspective, but when people talk about fairness, I find it kind of irrelevant. Look, you might, for example, if you're Elon Musk and you're worth a lot of money, it's always changing how much he's worth, but if you're worth a lot of money, other people suffering. Now, I'm not saying he's responsible. A lot of people will say that Elon Musk is the reason why people are poor. When someone gets rich, someone gets poor. I'm not really even making the argument, although there's definitely some credence to that. More of the argument I'm making is, regardless of how fair a system is, if people are suffering, if people are big losers, if people are extremely poor, if people are extremely jealous of what you have, there is going to be a lot of issues that arise from that. Maybe it's not all violence. Maybe it's just homeless people camping out outside your street and blocking traffic, and a lot of people protesting because they're unhappy, and a lot of violence in general. So even if you hypothetically said that it's only, free markets, any redistribution of wealth is unfair, I don't necessarily disagree with that. But I think it's kind of irrelevant, because what we should be doing generally is, without minimizing freedom completely, because you could make the argument that any free markets are kind of predatory in nature, and I don't agree with that, but I think you want to balance freedom with the overall life quality of your citizens, because if a lot of people are suffering, it will inevitably trickle up. People talk about trickle down economics. If a lot of people in your town are unemployed, don't have money, are doing drugs, even if you live in a nice part of town, that will come to you. You will end up suffering because other people are suffering. You can't, just box yourself in. Regardless of how good you're doing, you still need to deal with the realities of everyone else in society. So, look, I think the only debate that should be had, and most people on the right-wing side never engage in this, honestly, but the only debate that should be had is, can the system be ran better by the state, or is it ran better by free markets? That's the only debate to be had, and that's definitely a lively debate. I'm not saying it's obvious. I'm not saying that everything is better if it's ran. Every part of universal healthcare would be better if it was ran at a state level, because obviously, presumably wait times would go up. But my argument is, what's better, to wait 3 weeks for surgery and owe nothing, or to wait 3 weeks for surgery and owe $300,000? So look, there's obviously downsides to universal healthcare. Anyone that says there's no downside is just lying. If you had free college, there'd be downsides. There's downsides to each system. We just need to honestly look at them. There's just a lot of buzzwords: communism, socialism. It's just ridiculous. Is this system, are police officers, is it better to have a socialized police unit that gets local tax money from the county and we pay them and they're on staff, or would it be better for a rich person to hire private security? Probably makes more sense to do police, and that could be looked at every single industry. What makes more sense, and it could change as well. A lot of people view it as, and to some degree rightfully so, but a lot of people view all these socialized programs as, well, it might not be bad, but it's just continuous. More taxes, more taxes, more taxes. And whenever a program gets introduced, like Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, they never go away. So Steven Crowder's argument to some degree is, he might not even necessarily be against it, but he just doesn't like how far it can go. We give universal health care. Now are we also funding stuff that I don't morally support, like abortion? Are we funding transgender operations? So I could definitely see how it could get out of hand and how this could lead to other things. But overall,